I have never inspected a packet of fish so closely before in my life. I get the illusion of being informed because it's got loads of information on here. Responsibly sourced, that's right at the top. You know, you've got the Scottish Highlands there with a lock. It's animal welfare first, but nowhere here that I can see does it say whether it's farmed or not. Okay, yeah, look, it's right at the bottom here in really small writing. Look. This is Scottish salmon, bought from a local supermarket. But it's very hard to find any mention of the fact that this salmon was farmed. This is because in January 2025, producers of Scottish salmon won a legal battle to drop the word farmed from the front of their packaging. And it probably had something to do with headlines like these. Fish farming or aquaculture was supposed to be the solution to overfishing our oceans. But it hasn't exactly turned out that way. So what's the truth behind the farmed fish that we're eating? If you eat salmon, it's almost certainly going to be a particular variety called Atlantic salmon. And it's a huge business. We're talking about millions of tons of fish. And that's only possible thanks to open pen fish farming, which is a type of aquaculture. Since it started commercially in the 1960s and 70s, salmon aquaculture has quickly become the fastest growing food production system in the world, accounting for 70% of all salmon sold on the global market. And it's easy to see why. Dwindling fish stocks in the 90s forced the world to reckon with the unsustainability of wild fish catch. But cutting down wasn't easy, because billions of people rely on seafood as a vital source of protein and an important resource to help combat global hunger and malnutrition. So fish farming was put forward as the solution. And in a way, it was. Since the 90s, the amount of wild-caught fish we eat globally has been in decline and has recently been overtaken by farmed fish. Which sounds like good news, but there's a catch. And it's a catch that explains why Scottish salmon producers fought so hard to keep the word farmed off their labels.
Joe reported for us on the Scottish salmon farming industry, discovering high levels of fish mortality and food waste.
Parasitic sea lice have been at the heart of the industry's troubles for many years now.
An animal welfare charity says it's filmed tons of dead and dying salmon.
There are a number of problems with aquaculture and open pen fish farming. A big one is to do with the requirements of keeping so many fish in a small environment, and how some of the impacts of this can seep out into our oceans and into our diets. If open pen fish farms are not managed well, a cocktail of pesticides, antibiotics, food waste and fish excrement are released into the surrounding waters. A medium-sized fish farm of about 3,000 tons can produce as much effluent as a city of 50,000 people. Open pen fish farms can also lead to a significant rise in sea lice parasites, which can spread to wild populations with devastating effects. There's also the problem of farmed fish escaping their pens. In Norway, which exports 1.2 million tons of farmed salmon a year, there are frequent reports of salmon escaping open net pens, with many of them swimming up rivers in Norway, which can lead to them breeding with wild stocks, and this can contribute to species decline. So even though we're eating far less wild-caught fish, their populations are now being put at even greater risk. Atlantic salmon populations have dropped from 8 to 10 million in the 1970s to 3 to 4 million today. Only 500,000 are left in Norway, half of the number of 20 years ago, and Scotland has seen a 40% decline in salmon returning to rivers over 4 decades. And while the climate emergency has played a big role, as well as river degradation from pollution and industry and human activity at sea, fish farming is also to blame. Another big problem is that 1/5 of the global wild fish catch actually goes into the feed of farmed fish, particularly carnivorous fish such as salmon and trout. Estimates vary, but approximately 17 million of the 91 million metric tons of wild-caught fish are diverted to the aquaculture industry annually. And this is adding extra pressure to our already overexploited oceans. So what can we do? A lot of us are buying salmon because we want to make healthier choices in the food that we eat. But it's not that simple. There's higher fat content in farmed salmon than wild salmon because of higher levels of saturated and monosaturated fatty acids, as well as higher levels of omega-6 fatty acids. But then again, there's higher levels of contaminants such as mercury in wild salmon. But this doesn't mean that we need to stop eating farmed fish altogether, because not all farmed fish is bad. Shellfish farming often has the lowest environmental footprint, such as mussels and oysters, because they require little feed, filter the water, and are very fast growing. But a big exception is farmed shrimp and prawn, which contributes massively to environmental degradation, as well as having serious ethical implications in terms of forced labour and modern slavery. And then there's omnivorous fish, such as tilapia, carp, catfish, and pangasius, which can, if managed well, be farmed more sustainably because they can eat plant-based feed. But every type of farming at scale has its trade-offs, which is why we need a bit more information rather than less about the food that's going onto our plates. Thanks for watching. If you like videos like this that help us understand more about the food that we're putting into our bodies, please check out this video we made about how we started making food from industrial waste. And as ever, please like and share this video.